We're live. We're here. Oh my goodness, this is exciting. It's only the blinking 200th episode of Rail Natter. Woo. Wait a minute. There's things we need to do here, which are, for example, are thinking hard about the way that we're going to celebrate this, which is loudly, apparently. Good grief. Also we can do things like I don't know, for example, we can get very excited by playing the Game of Horns. Episode 200. What else? What other things can we do? We can talk about how funny, you know, how funny. In fact, you know what? It's not funny. Let's just talk about all of my bad jokes over the last 200 episodes. Anyway, right, enough of that, because we have got some things to talk about. What we're doing, yes, it's episode 200. It's the 200th Rail Natter episode. Holy cow, how did we get here? I don't know. It's quite incredible. There's some fun stuff we're going to be doing tonight. I'm very excited. Yeah, we're nearly at 4 years. Good grief. Yeah, 200 episodes. We are nearly at 4 years. We're going to be doing something different for the 4-year anniversary. That's for the future. We'll get there. But today, we are going to be looking at every episode we've done since episode 100. So we're going to be looking at the last 100 episodes. We're going to be going for do the Game of People want the Game of Horns again. Yeah, okay, I can do the Game of Horns again. Wait a minute, let me just get my slider ready. Ready, steady. It's episode 200. Yeah, woo woo woo. There we are. Done the Game of Horns. Nice. Anyway. Oh no, there's another way we can celebrate. There we go. Episode 200. Handel's with us. Anyway, sorry, let's not continue to mash on the very limited list of nonsense I've got going on here. Right, focus. We're going to go through all the episodes, and rather than going through them in order, we're going to kind of group them so we can think about some of the, actually try and learn some of the lessons. So this isn't just going to be a generic whiz through of each episode. We're going to kind of group the episodes into kind of where we've learned lessons, things we've done, look at kind of see what we can learn. So this is actually going to be a more useful episode. If you've not ever listened to a Rail Natter before or watched Rail Natter, this episode might be quite useful for you. In the meantime, I'm having a bit too fun with the soundboard. I wish it was a soundboard rather than me opening a folder with a load of WAV files in it, hence the slight delay. Anyway, right, enough of that. Right, yes, everyone, welcome
to tonight's Rail Natter.
And as the Intercity 225 fades away, yeah, it's just a brief, gentle reminder of what kicked this all off back in March 2020 when I'd been doing what I've been doing. I think we talked about this before. I'd been doing some Periscope sessions, Q&A sessions, and I'd been enjoying them. They were good fun. I really enjoyed them. And I thought, maybe I could make this a bit of a regular thing. We can all, a few of us, a few of the usual suspects on Twitter and a few others can kind of have a chat about transport stuff. And it's grown from there. It's grown massively. And, obviously I thought, well, okay. Well, so back then, part of the reason it grew is because we kicked off this weekly Q&A session that pretty rapidly stopped being a Q&A session, started being Q&A plus all sorts of nonsense, with guests joining us and all sorts of good fun. And we're now at the point where we have, episode 100, we went through the previous 100 episodes, and I think we just ran through them in order, and that was still fun, but possibly not as useful as tonight. I made a point of this being a much more useful episode as a bit of a celebration. But now we have, so we went through all that, but now we jump forwards, and so let's start. Let's get cracking. We've got an hour to get through all this, and some surprises towards the end. I didn't pour myself a drink. I actually just have some water because it's important to stay hydrated. I drank quite a bit of sherry in a preceding episode. I think possibly the Hyperloop episode, and gave myself a headache. My alcohol tolerance is low. In any case, what were some of the things we had to do? Indeed, let's first of all say hello. Look, it's me. I'm in the merch. We've got this sorted. All right, it's the merchandise. Actually, you know what? Let's go desk cam here, because it's desk cam. Oh, I just broke it off the thing. But that's fine, because I'm going to use this later. Look, it's hello. It's desk cam. And yeah, it's the Rail Natter, not a Metro sorter. I cannot drive this like this. There, it's facing me. We've got it sorted. Just rapidly escape from this from this to this, where it's much more stable. We'll be using that camera later. Just stay there, camera. It's over there now. It's just my hand. Hello, everyone. Right, enough of that. So, what did we have to do? We're going to go through various groupings. We're going to start with the big depressing stuff and try and move towards some fun. So we're going to have our vegetables first, and then move towards pudding towards the end. So let's relegate me to the top corner and say, what were we doing? Well, first of all, we had to chew through, throughout this last 100 episodes, so since episode 200, we had to chew, episode 100 rather, we had to chew through successive bad UK policy choices. It's quite funny looking at these kind of big policy choices and kind of what they look like and how they got increasingly dramatically worse over time. It's pretty painful. So, back in episode 101, we had Jen Williams on, wondering whether the government would get away with the rail betrayal. Well, this seems like somewhat of a trite episode, or a futile episode. Actually, futile is a better word. A futile episode, given what happened later. So there's that. Episode 126. Then we looked at the Transport Select Committee's integrated rail plan report. So that was this after the session I'd attended, the report that came off that. That was 126. Episode 170. We then looked at what went wrong at the National College for High Speed Rail, and that tied into some of these broader policy pictures. But interestingly, it tapped into some of the other domains. So it tapped into BEIS and it tapped into DFE, and kind of looked at the impact there. Episode 173. Hello, everyone, by the way, who's in the chat. It's absolutely lovely to have lots of friendly, familiar faces in the chat. Very, very good to have you all. We'll do chuck your questions. Remember to at me in, and you can shout all sorts of nice things. Say hi to each other as well. There's some friends in this chat that I dare say might be friends because of Rail Natter, which is lovely. Episode 173. We're talking about bad policy choices. We got to the fact that the government decided it was going to close most ticket offices in stations, which obviously was baffling and is, I mean, they've U-turned on it publicly, but they're still trying to do it in the behind the scenes. And some of the reforms to Great British Rail and the creation of Great British Railways intend to allow this to happen more easily. So we have to be very wary of some of these changes coming up. Episode 185, we had Dr. Alex Chapman talking about bad policy. We talked about aviation policy and the fact that the government's been chucking a bung after bung towards the aviation industry, despite the fact that it's essentially in steep decline and doesn't do anything. And this is where that some of the kind of the talk about cornerstone episodes. I think that was a really important episode. This episode 185, really cornerstone episode, because we looked at the fact that UK tourism policy intends to promote domestic holiday making. So all this stuff, holiday making, UK climate policy promoting emissions reduction, UK economic policy promoting regional regeneration, UK political consensus is for economic independence and strength. And so if all four of these metrics, so more tourism, better climate policy, fewer emissions, regional regeneration and economic independence and strength, and aviation makes every single one of these worse. So yeah, that was a really good episode. So if you've not watched that one, it's well worth going in and kind of chewing through the data on that one. Tom is saying, listening to me speaking at 2 times speed is hilarious. I already speak quickly, so it's probably a fairly baffling way to watch. Episode 187, that's right. What feels like not that. In terms of episodes, we went from episode 101 to episode 187. HS2 has been cancelled. So we were doing really well. So the IRP was not the low watermark at this point, and we did that. That was a traditional Q&A, which was nice, wasn't it? And then 194, we were then looking at the passenger rail usage data that completely counters what government's been coming up with and understanding what those ramifications were. So, and then of course we kind of most recently we got angry about the UK plan for drivers and this strange. Indeed, there's some news out today about the fact that this is some surprised pundits going, "Oh my God, the Tories are relying on conspiratorialism and basically anti-Semitic tropes to define transport policy." And it's like, no, they said this at the Conservative Party conference. They were explicit about it then. They're not playing clever games. They're just reasonably unintelligent people who are in charge of the country right now. And this document, so the news was that this plan for drivers and a lot of this stuff, apart from being general electioneering and pork barrel politics, is coming out of a genuine ignorance and a genuine conspiratorialism at the heart of the current Conservative administration. There's a lot of other stuff that happened that we had to think about. Those are the big policy areas that we were chewing through. But then there's lots of smaller things that we went through in our news episodes. And I'm not going to fly through. Obviously, there are a few news episodes that we went through, and I'm not going to go through each in kind of pick out detail in every single one. But there are a few news episodes that had particular things that were interesting to look at. So episode 102, so barely into our second century of episodes, and it was a Hyperloop episode because Virgin Hyperloop had been converted into a DP World had just bought them and said, we're not going to do passengers, we're just thinking about freight now. Lol. Indeed, yes, Virgin Hyperloop here basically carrying over. That was the fun news article in that one, if you remember. That was way back a long time ago. And we jump forward to episode 109, the Treasury minting an NFT, which is very funny, of course. That never went anywhere. And within that was the fact that, what was that, barely, weeks after the IRP had been introduced, had been published, lots of it was wrong. Again, funny to look back on this, how futile all that was, given all that's been completely shredded by government's recent changes. So quite something. Of course, we had episode 127. We had, these rabbit ears unofficial strikes, which was nonsense. But within that, a bit of a reminder of the fact that Britain was on fire at this point. Literally, these images will stick with me for a long time, which are just suburbs in Britain. London suburbs just burning down, just spontaneously burning down. Just, pretty shocking scenes. And it's amazing how much we seem to have just forgotten about that. The government has just sort of shrugged its shoulder and said, well, this is just the cost of us doing what we want to do. Quite remarkable. Episode 100, isn't this bit's fun? Episode 131, new government. Who was that? That's right. It was Liz Truss. I'm here to be angry about pork markets, and indeed she was, and she lasted for 50 days, if that, not very long. Then she was off, created a mess, which is then fun because what was that? Episode 131, she arrived. Episode 141, she was gone, and there was a new emergency budget to fix everything. They'd to the point where there was an actual document published to say we're reversing all of this stuff, which is hugely entertaining to me. So people are asking, were these pendolinos supposed to be air quotes? Oh, they kind of look like air quotes, don't they? No, that's just a fun picture, but yeah, I suppose they do kind of look like air quotes. If we jump forward to just about 2 episodes later, we had, and not for the last time, we had a bit of a view of Amtrak Joe, now Genocide Joe, letting the side down somewhat by using executive legislation to strike break what could have been a critical strike for actually fixing some of the problems on the US railroad. Actually, he broke the strike, and as a result of that, we did not see the level of action, the level of response from the rail industry. In fact, we just saw complete apathy from the class ones in the face of the strikers. So it's a really bad, generally pretty bad news, although there were some concessions to the workers, but that was a canary in the coal mine, I dare say, for what we subsequently saw Biden do. Within that, though, there was an interesting thing because we started to get a sense of who Mark Harper is, and we had with some of these lines, a better sense of balance. We want to see investment in roads, a more sustainable footing for rail, which means reduction in funding. All this stuff that we needed to start paying close attention to. Episode 150, Bonnie Price joined us for a news episode, and things were just going great. And what was one of the key things? We looked at some of the... So actually, Greg Marsden had just had his Freedom of Information request granted on... we need to get Greg on to talk about this, actually, on the assumptions about future traffic levels and how those have influenced the decarbonising transport kind of plans poorly. is how I describe that. And we were talking about GBR and some of the negative ramifications. One of the funny things was all the fuss being made about, and we've been following this through news episodes, was the fuss being made about the headquarters of GBR. And of course it won't be, and it certainly is not currently in Derby. And then other stuff. What other news? We had the Tesla news episode 168, sorry, about the fact that, you know, the Tesla had been overpromising and it was starting to cause them some legal headaches. But within that episode was a rather significant milestone of the official cancellation of platforms 15 and 16 through Manchester Piccadilly, and the upgrades to Oxford through Oxford Road and the general Castlefield corridor. I've said Castleford there, haven't I? There's a mistake made in the original, but that's not Castleford. That's a TRU project that I've been working on. The Castlefield corridor there. There we are. Let's just fix that. Yes, other news episodes. Episode 175. We had fun with Dave Grohl taking the train. What was the story in that? It was we're talking about canaries in the coal mine. It was the departure of Mark Thurston, presumably seeing which way the wind was blowing and deciding to get out before this project got severely kneecapped. Some pretty painful premonitions, I would imagine, from Thurston there. And then, of course, episode 189. So that episode 175, Thurston's off. 189, Sunak cancels HS2 and introduces this wonderful plan for drivers that we then looked through. So that was the news and all the various painful things. And of course, within that, we were looking at news episodes. We look at economics. We look at fun stuff that's adjacent to transport and key and important stuff. And then indeed, I've got a little pile of news stuff that I'm sure we'll be looking at next episode. But on top of that, we go look at big bad policy decisions. We look at the news and stuff going on. Some of it positive. I try and balance some of the negative stuff with various positive things. But this is not a happy clappy podcast. It's a realistic podcast. We look at the realities and we attempt to kind of look at ways to solve those realities. And one of the things to do related to that is to think about what the future of Britain's railways is. What are the railways for? What should they look like? How should they be structured? And we started with episode 112, which was, I think, a reasonably positive, if mildly sceptical look at Network Rail's modular design for small and medium stations. I still like this. I still want this to succeed. We need to get Frank on to talk about this and other things and see what the smashing of Network Rail since this episode has meant for some of these schemes and whether they've been put on the back burner, which I really hope not. We shall see. But that was I enjoyed that episode. And we looked at some of these stations. I thought this was a positive episode, and I'm keen for some of this stuff to continue. I've attempted through my day job to try and think forward plan with some of this stuff and what stations might look like, and I've used some of these graphics in some of my proposals. Fairly soon after that, we were looking at branding and what branding Britain's railways should have. I'm sure we'll revisit this kind of self-contained series of just what X should Britain's railways have anyway. But the key output from that was, and it was kind of related to the previous episode in actual fact. In fact, it was related to conversations I'd had with the team who were dealing with the homogenisation of the English, at least, railway estate, and they were looking at Wales and Scotland. And I pointed out that multimodal integration, which in a way includes kind of devolved power, must beat unimodal uniformity. So unimodal uniformity is important, but it's less important than multimodal integration. Public transport modes should matter less than public transport as a uniform system. We'll come to a cornerstone episode that relates to this later on. So that was a key bit of learning from that. We looked at Labour's plans, which have to say continued to be watered down since this episode, but there are still there's a lot of pushing on buses. Louise is still pretty vigorously passionate about buses and about she continues to be very passionate about fixing the railway we have, even if some of those pressures about what the railway might look like in terms of its changes to that railway network are mostly driven by reefs. So there is some minor optimism there, even if I would not necessarily advocate voting for Labour in the next general election, but that's another story. We are likely to see a Labour government, and I shall certainly be pleased to work with a new administration on shaping transport for the better in any case. That was episode 134. On a similar theme, we had Tom Haynes-Doran joining us to talk about... hello, Tom, by the way, just in case you are watching. You might well be. Tom's joining us to talk about how to fix Britain's broken railways. And there's some things in there that there's some conflicts on it wasn't a complete 100% alignment on what our views, what my views, what perhaps Rail Natter's views are versus Tom's, but certainly Tom sees a lot of the problems, and it's a very compelling, he makes very compelling arguments about some of those challenges, and certainly we align on the need for there to be just an ejection by and large of substantial sections of pointless private sector involvement that slow down change, that limit growth, and that most of all create unnecessary complexity for the industry, for its staff, and for passengers, and freight users critically. A different Tom, yes. No, hello, other Tom, who's also in the chat. There are many Toms watching and listening. Just there are many Gareths, strangely enough. We have multiple Gareths in the Patreon, let alone, and it's not just me using a pseudonym or a different last name. Anyway, episode 190, 30 years of privatisation and what should happen next, was a very recent episode, hopefully a good one. And we looked at some of the things that need to happen. We looked at the fact that we should set the structure, set the mission, set the timeline, set the funding, and step out of the way. Indeed, I've kind of slightly changed my mind on this one because, well, not changed my mind, but I think quite logically you might say, well, this is pragmatic because actually the reality is the first thing we can do is set the structure. In an ideal world, you'd set the mission first. You'd set the mission, you'd set the timeline, then you'd set the structure, then you'd set the funding. But I suppose from a pragmatic perspective, actually, this, we have to consider we have an existing railway that needs structural change. So the reason why I put the structure first is because that is critical for us to at least get day-to-day running of the railway fixed. So I stand by this order for Britain's railways in practical terms. In an idealised sense, you'd set the mission first. I do think setting the mission first is critical, but to be honest, there's such a vacuum of leadership that the structure is really important because that's the quickest thing we can do, and it eliminates a lot of uncertainty in the industry. So episode 198, getting very close now, back into our very recent festive episodes. Of course, I'm not going to dwell on this because we did it very recently. It's a fun episode. A few people having their minds changed having watched this, which is nice. I think a few drivers who'd been watching, a few staff members who'd been watching, kind of realised the angle that I was taking on making this case, and the fact that I didn't feel like there should be a mandatory running of services over the holiday season, or certainly on Christmas Day, but that it should certainly come from a voluntary basis. And we looked at two questions really. Should we run a better rail service over the holiday season, and should we concentrate all of our major works on the Christmas blockade? So yeah, some really good, some fun discussions in the episode. So I very much enjoyed. Very, very much enjoyed kind of that episode and the discussions that followed. We suggested, so those were looking at the railway, but you can't really do much of that without solving bigger problems in the UK and indeed further afield. So what did we look at? Well, we had John Stone joining us for episode 105, which is an absolute key message of the Rail Natter manifesto. The UK must decentralise power to make public transport better. It's key. We cannot do it without this. We absolutely cannot. We cannot create the railway system or the transport system, or frankly the society at large that we want, without decentralising significant power away from Westminster, and indeed from Whitehall. And kind of off the back of that, kind of jumping, sidestepping some of the solutions for them, is how to, indeed, we chatted to Harry, an inspirational young man, and about how to get involved and stay involved with transport policy, and with how to get excited at a very young age, but how to get involved, how to do some of this stuff. And Harry, I'm pleased to say, is still very much banging the drum, getting involved behind the scenes and publicly on various bits and pieces. So yeah, Harry, that was back on episode 107. It would be fun to check in with Harry again in the future. Actually, there are some projects that I instigate off the back of this episode that have trundled on slowly, mostly because of me, but that I think will form bits of episodes in the future, which will be fun. Hello, Will. I think you were in the chat. Episode 144, we're talking about big Rail Natter manifesto items. What's number one? Well, it's abolishment of the Treasury, of course. And it's not just me saying this. Stian Westlake, who's chief exec of the Royal Statistical Association, I believe, if I've got that correct, agrees. And he spoke about why he agrees and why we should do this stuff. But we're not just talking about the UK or GB. We're talking about bigger picture stuff. And we had John Worth over to talk about the problems with the wider European railway system and kind of what John has referred to as the implementation gap. this gap of how do we implement the solutions. Plenty of studies talking about what those solutions are, but how do we implement them? And that was a very interesting episode. And I think there are parallels at a national level, but certainly that integration question is always an eternal challenge. Getting the balance right between devolution and centralisation, key challenge here. Jamie Potter's asking when I'm going to be made leader of BR2. Probably never. I upset too many people. Although I don't know whether I have the most power at the sidelines, making suggestions free from the. I don't say the politics, free from the restrictions of becoming a civil servant. I don't know. Who knows? I mean, obviously, it's very inflated of my ego to suggest I would ever be anywhere near taking on such a role. But never say never. There are certain high up at railway industry positions that I don't think are necessarily entirely out of my reach at this point. Who knows? That'd be exciting, wouldn't it? I wonder if it'd still do Rail Natter as the leader of as the chair of the British Railways Board. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? Anyway, jokes. Obviously, I mean, have high aspirations, folks. But I would love to get involved in have a deeper hand in influencing this stuff. But is it sometimes useful to be at the sidelines and kind of postulate and pull the Overton window in the right direction rather than necessarily kind of having to deal with some of those more difficult practical realities, kind of the messy neoliberal realities that we still have to live within. Until, of course, we abolish the Treasury. Episode 188 was a key one, and unfortunately, Britain Remade has turned out to be. What were they sharing recently? That was just absolute. Well, they were sharing some slightly dubious tax stuff, and then more recently than that, they've been sharing stuff. Was it related to like driverless cars or, anyway? In any case, depressingly, Britain Remade ended up being exactly what I thought, which is basically some sort of centre-right think tanky guys. And they keep missing the point on costs of infrastructure and absolutely missing the solutions as well. Not entirely, but for the most part. I'm not saying their work is pointless, but it's frustratingly off the mark in a few ways. So we had a look at what the problems were, what the key issues were. Why is UK infrastructure so slow and costly to build? And kind of some of the things we looked at, lack of political commitment, overburdened scope, industry and delivery body structure. But the key one is of course, just reiterating this point. It wasn't that long ago that we did this episode. The entire UK economy is built on rentier extraction. So why are we surprised that our cost is so much higher? It's just an absolutely fundamental point. Is our entire economy is deliberately as fractured and atomized as possible to attempt to create that value, because people who've created our society in that neoliberal doctrine is that is a good thing for the economy, because all the interfaces, all the messy interfaces somehow create value, whether that's tax extraction or whether it's economic activity. That mess creates value, but that mess inherently, as we've said, gets in the way of actually delivering physical stuff, whether it's services or infrastructure. So the reason that everything takes so long, the reason that it costs so much, is because that's the way our economy is set up, and you can't solve that problem. You can't really. It was a fantastic episode with another Dr. Gareth Fern, Trash Future episode, talking about the planning system and kind of dips into some of this stuff. So well worth a listen to that, actually. And some of the other stuff we did, we reminded ourselves what all of this is really about. So and amongst all these, how do we fix the railways? How do we fix the bigger picture stuff? It's important to remind ourselves, well, why do we need to fix it? Why can't we just kind of not worry about things? So we started, fairly early on in our second century with episode 103. Was a page turning through Network Rail's third climate adaptation report, which very neatly, if I a document that I refer to in lectures and to students and say they should absolutely, in fact, to all engineers to say they should, and in fact everyone watching, you should have this downloaded and pay very close attention to what this document says, because it talks about the pressures, the physical pressures of by and large resilience on the rail network. The rail network, the extent to which the rail network is going to be knackered by climate change and how we respond to it. But it's not just about resilience. We need to expand, because we have to also deal with this is reactive. Well, we also have to be proactive, and proactivity means more public transport. And so we looked at the TUC report about how much more public transport we need. It's a good page turn. It was a really interesting one, and I refer back to this quite regularly. So really another, I would argue, probably a cornerstone episode, because it really put further evidence behind some of my claims about us needing to. Well, indeed, it was more aggressive than what I previously before this had been saying. Double rail capacity by the middle of this century. Well, actually, we need to double rail capacity by the middle of the 2030s, which is a lot sooner than 2050. So, good episode. Thea Riofrancos joined us for an excellent episode on one of a number of episodes of looking at the challenges of some of the pitfalls that we see ahead of us in terms of climate change and the response to climate change and the intersectionality of climate change with climate justice and with social justice and with essentially what could be described as neo-colonialism, techno-colonialism that's happening as a result of the global north assets, basically resource stripping the planet to continue to live how it does. And we can't continue to live the way we do. This is why I fight back on the idea that EVs are the solution, despite that being the view of large swathes of society, not just government, but lots of people within consultancy, within the technocratic kind of function of the country that believe that actually EVs just swapped out will solve the problem. Well, they won't, and certainly not the way that EVs look right now. Certainly not with wank panzers being the primary mode of transport. So Thea took us through this in great detail, showed us some of the impacts, talked about the solutions as well. It wasn't just a problems episode, it was a solutions episode. Yeah, episode 169, really fantastic episode, that one. And then again, Juliette Phillips in episode 172 looked at some of the hype and issues around alternative energy sources and hydrogen. Our first guest episode with Mike Muldoon, incidentally now my business development director for the company I work for. Hi, Mike. We talked about hydrogen trains then when Mike was working for Alstom, but now hydrogen is. We need to be very wary of the hydrogen hype, and this is a good thing. Skepticism on any alternative energy source, and to some extent we need to think about this in relation to batteries as well, but certainly hydrogen is I haven't moved my position so much as narrowed my skepticism, let's say, in that I think Mike was pretty open in the first guest episode actually that this is a government has asked the question, and Alstom at the time were providing a solution. But it's the wrong solution, and I think episode 172 is a really good example. It was a case study in an adjacent sector, so we were looking at housing, but it just showed how that has now manifested, in the housing sector. So that they're a bit ahead of us on defining some of this stuff. They've actually said even this government has acknowledged hydrogen isn't the answer for heating homes, and the railways are way behind on that, and we should be asserting this ourselves internally. It doesn't need we should be kind of telling government no, hydrogen isn't the answer. We're not going to look at that anymore. And within this sort of swing of guest episodes I did when I was on shared parental leave, we had episode 180, which was about banning private jets to make the world better. Fundamental bit of climate justice, really key kind of theme, and a very obvious and frankly quite easy thing to do, because the number of people, real people, voters that you would piss off by doing this is it's zero. It's materially zero voters that you would piss off by doing this. So then you kind of have to say, well, why is it not happening then? Question. And then again, as I say, this big swing of like shared parental leave episodes. Leo Murray, friend of the show, and all around good chap. We had a good episode talking about again some of these issues of who are we impacting, particularly disabled people who have disabled by the environment around them, by the built environment around them. Well, it's not going to help if we put a load of stupid charges in their way. As well as eating into the space that has already been kind of absolutely kind of occupied, attacked, diminished by the private motor vehicle already. So yeah, it was about electric vehicle chargers being kept off pavements. Good episode, that one, episode 182. They're all good episodes, but some very good cornerstone episodes in this run. There are other things. So we kind of then, okay, right, that was some stuff about climate, but we looked at how to kind of harness public transport strengths, to tackle, climate change or inequality, some of these big questions. Fundamentally, public transport is a tool to make people's lives better, to allow us to see friends, enjoy company, culture, And it, if you so fancy, enjoy the commute. And this, really a major cornerstone episode. Very good friend of the show, Dr. Kevin Tennant here. Really, episode 140 was a proper cornerstone episode of Rail Natter. I think fundamental to everything that Rail Natter is about, fundamental to everything I do in my day job. And this slide, I think, within that episode was the really good one. And it talked about the 6 elements of public transport that you use independent of mode. So this is not just railways. This is, yes, permanent way. Yes, we talked about the permanence of the permanent way, but how can we tap into some of the benefits of tram and railway systems for other systems like primarily buses? Visibility, simplicity, integration, affordability, safety, and ownership. And those, it's not just explicitly those words, but it's the implication of those. So visibility is about physical infrastructure, and it's not just tracks in the ground, although that's a major benefit, but having step-ups for bus stops, having build-outs for bus stops, having well-made kind of stations for bus stops that are more than just a la sombrita, but like having the equipment that tells you the customer information service, the brand, all that stuff, the visible branding, of course, as well. Simplicity, timetabling. You're having an integrated system as well. These both simplicity and integration are key. So independent of the mode, you want it to be simple so that people can tap in, travel around. Great. It needs to be affordable. It needs to be perceived as affordable. And again, integrated ticketing, tap in or contactless is a way to kind of tackle through that. People talking about reliability. Tommy talked about reliability, but reliability really is integrated into all of these. You do not have simplicity. You do not have the perception. Reliability is an undercurrent to all of these, but these 6 are the key. Reliability is kind of a necessary given. Safety, safety isn't just explicitly safety, but it's about comfort, the perceived feeling of public transport being a safe way to move around, and ownership. The feeling like we are bought into the system, independent of the material ownership of that system. Although invariably, devolved direct ownership is the best way to go. Cities should own their own public transport systems, but it should be independent of whether there is some bizarre intermediate kind of private or partnered intermediary, JV intermediary. It should be perceived as owned by the people who use it. TfL, Londoners feel like they have ownership over TfL. This episode, really a kind of a fantastic one that I really refer back to this a lot, and I use this slide a lot in day job even now. It's just really good stuff. And then we had a bit of a page turn through a report looking at how modal shift works and understood that side of things and Episode 151, that's a good episode to go back to. Episode 157, why does the UK find it so hard to integrate public transport modes? Martha's got to be in the chat. Martha joining us for an excellent episode on particular UK problems, but actually there's some important stuff in there in terms of what transport integration looks like, and actually this maps beautifully onto the permanence of the permanent way episode, Kevin's episode. Transport integration of fares, integration of routes, integration of schedules. That's it. That's transport integration. That really neatly is. This was a really nice slide. I was very pleased with this one. Another key cornerstone episode all about what we love and want to see more of in Rail Natter Towers. Kind of fairly rapidly after that episode, which was 157. In fact, the literal next episode was me going off on one about the fact that there is no such thing as the last mile problem. I do not like this phrase, the last mile problem. I see it as a lazy way to basically dismiss public transport or to advocate for other nonsense systems. I didn't pick a particular slide from this, but there's overall a general theme that this last mile problem is generally used to either stop and delay real stuff happening, or justify the delay of real solutions, or to justify stupid solutions or vanity projects. So what else? So some of the things we've done is some good core Rail Natter fodder, which was we shared our thoughts on the shape of the rail network both here and abroad. Some good rail network Crayon-Easter stuff, and of course we couldn't avoid kicking off. This is Rail Natter. This is, we have one of the secondary Art of the Engine theme tunes as the Rail Natter theme tune now. Officially, I haven't thieved it. I had the discussion with the person who owned, the Johnny Trunk, and that's why we use it and are able to use those tunes. Thanks, Johnny. Cheers, mate. But one of the cornerstone episodes of the previous 100 was when we mapped out what the Welsh Railway Network should look like. Well, we then turned this into a reality by looking at what the new north-south main line for Wales would actually look like. We had maps. The maps weren't quite as good as I'd liked because I ended up with a day job rush to get these pulled together. But those maps are there, and I will create them in great detail. Maybe we just review them again in another episode in the future. But Llinell Llydreig was the name selected for this network, which is cool. Ended up in the press a bit afterwards, which was good fun. And yes, I will be doing presentations in Wales about this sometime in this year, which should be fun. That was episode 116. Good fun. That was in Wales. And of course, yeah, we had this map that showed us the overall route and how it would stitch together, what it would look like in terms of cost. The Dragon Line, as showcased back in 2021. And then, lots of good fun stuff going on there. Anyway, so moving on, John Stone joined us again, episode 129, to look at the European railway network and some of the problems of the European rail network, particularly in terms of high-speed lines. So went through that. We had Simon Kendler joining us. Simon, good friend of the show as well, joining us to talk about where the North needs wires and kind of what northern electrification should look like, and some mapping in a RIA style that I didn't think was as good as it should be. And actually, in hindsight, I reckon you could do a better job with some of that mapping. The colour schemes weren't so clear, and it was a bit difficult to read. I think they could do better with the actual map, but the logic behind it was sound, and it was a good episode. I enjoyed that. So, episode 152, we then looked at a slightly one of a few of our alternate history episodes. We kind of looked at what the UK's post-war intercity rail network should have looked like if we didn't have the kind of entrenched indeed in some cases pre-grouping attitudes to the rail network. A better rail network was possible, and we could have seen enhancements kind of along the lines of what Beeching proposed in terms of those mainline enhancements, the core routes to be enhanced. So, episode 161, we then looked at High Speed 2, and there is an episode coming up where we look at what the UK's, and yes, I mean, in fact, not just the UK, but the overall North Atlantic archipelago's high-speed rail network should look like. More on that later. But yes, episode 161, the 5 ways that High Speed 2 should have been better. A fun episode, that one. Then episode 177, on a similar theme, we then looked at any of the Rabbit Ear's new HS2 Eastern Leg options and if they're any good. This is a classic journalistic trick because the answer was no. No. A brief interlude. We did a couple of, so we had Llinell Llydreig. We always have a bit of Welsh theme, not as much as I'd have liked recently. Actually, there's more to be done, and I know we didn't start the year with a Welsh episode. I'm so sorry, but ScotRail. We did some Scotland episodes. In fact, we did just a couple of Scotland episodes. But we had one where we had Professor Ian Doherty joining to talk about the end of ScotRail's private life, talk about the potential challenges that ScotRail would have faced as a state body. But actually, I think some of those ScotRail's nationalisation didn't solve the industrial relation issues. Those still took a long time to resolve, but things are normalising now, and we're seeing positivity. And indeed, that was where I felt that it was valuable to have our chat with Alex Hines. I think this is a great episode. It was a chance for us to speak to someone at the top of the industry, which can always be. It's always going to be interesting. I'm always if I can get people at the top end of the industry on here, I will do. I think it's and I will do my very best to not make it a slightly embarrassing I coup a manager the whole time. I like to think that it was a constructive conversation, but that I wasn't too blushed and shy. I think Alex is a good railway manager, though. I think it was a good conversation. It was allowed us to look at some of the positive things that are happening in terms of Scotland's railways, although it's not all rainbows and sunshine north of the border in terms of rail investment, given how much is being still spent on roads. That was episode 176. It was a good episode. I enjoyed that very much. But it's not all good news, and indeed that's true in Scotland. We took a very detailed look at how badly the railway failed at Carman, but also at a few other places historically too. There were a succession of because it was the first fatal derailment in a very long time on the mainline network. On the obviously there was Sandylands tram derailment before that, but in terms and lots of other fatal incidents happened on the railway. This is the first time that a mainline train derailed and resulted in a fatality, and so we spent a lot of time dwelling on what was a very thorough RAIB report, and I think rightly so. It was a lot of hours, but I think that I think that it was right that we spent this time, to be honest. There's lots that I learned, lots that in having to explain and go through some of this. Hopefully there's lots that you learned, lots for us to think about. And kind of we went through and talked about, it was the 3 C's, wasn't it? CDM regulation, crisis management, and okay, there are other contributing factors of crashworthiness very much within that, and climate. Actually, so it's 4 C's. It's CDM, crisis management, crashworthiness, and climate change that were causing those issues. So we had episode 106, 108, 110, and 113 where we kind of went, we an introduction. We looked at CDM regs. We then looked at crisis management within the report. We then looked at some of the other contributing factors, including batteries bursting into flames. And then we talked about, episode 113, we talked about crashworthiness and the conclusions, the recommendations of the RAIB report. We went into great detail on this because, for a variety of reasons, particularly, I know we talked about crashworthiness because I think it was important, and it was a thing I'd stuck my neck out being pilloried for and was proven right about. There could be no more explicit terms within an RAIB report about the impact of this train versus a more modern train. When you talk, as many others have pointed out, if the RAIB are saying this would have been less severe had a modern train been used rather than this train, and 3 people were killed in a train that was carrying 9 people, or was it 6 people, then they mean those people wouldn't have died. That's what the RAIB said. They said those people wouldn't have died if this had been a modern train. That's essentially what the RAIB, for the RAIB to say what they said, which was pretty strong words for the RAIB. That's basically that is what they mean. Not basically, that is what they meant. One or more of the people who died wouldn't have died, and that's a red line for me. As a railway, we run a very the railway is the safest way to travel in Europe. It's as safe as airlines. It's on a par with aviation in terms of safety. The reason it's on par with aviation in terms of safety, the reason it's the safest way to travel across land, is because we don't sit on our laurels and ignore obvious lessons from the mistakes we've made. We change things, we improve safety. We do not run 50-year-old trains. And then obviously this is pertinent to recent incidents on Scotland with the HST cab being obliterated by a third-party fallen tree across the line, an event that's only going to happen more frequently as we go into the future. Talking of HSTs, we then looked at Dalwhinnie, left car behind in episode 138. We looked at the time that an HST derailed twice within the same few seconds at Dalwhinnie, which was quite an interesting report because it went into quite a few very interesting, some interesting engineering, technical stuff, but also operational issues. That was an interesting episode. Episode 166, 2 half-forgotten but important railway crashes from the 1980s, one in Scotland and one further south. There's the one here on the next to the A9. That was an interesting episode. Of course, we looked at Salisbury. Very interesting episode there to look through what happened at Salisbury. That was pretty recent, episode 192. But it wasn't just historic rail crashes that we were looking at. We were also looking at some other history to kind of help us inform us why stuff is the way it is now. Zydit is asking what the previous crash was before Carmen. Well, so Sandylands happened in London, of course, with the Croydon tram. But the last mainline fatal derailment was Greyrig in 2007. Where there was a single fatality, but so I used Greyrig as a comparison because the energies and forces involved were pretty similar in those two events. The track geometry, speeds, lots of they're not completely comparable, but there are lots of parallels between the two incidents. And so it's except that one was a modern, not even that modern a train, but a relatively modern train versus a very much not modern train. So well worth having a look through. So what history we're looking at? Well, firstly, pertinently, we looked at a history of UK rail strike action, and indeed the history of strikes in general. We looked at a history of unionisation and strike action, which hopefully was quite interesting. So I certainly found it interesting to kind of research. That was episode 119. We had Alice on. Alice joined us to talk about railway watches. This is a fun episode. I had a lot of fun on this episode. As always, it's always a lot of fun with the Napathe Extended Universe. Anyone in there, but Alice is particularly pro at podcasting. She is very, very good at this. Go and listen to Kill James Bond if you don't already. It's very, very entertaining series of podcasts that Alice is on. Well, There's a Problem podcast, of course. I wouldn't call it a sister show because that would suggest we have any formal connection, but certainly two shows that pay lots of attention to each other. That was episode 123. Nice numerical number there. A collection of railway watches and where to find them. Great fun. What's fun about this is that it led to, I don't even have it on, I took it off, but I have that watch now, or not quite exactly the one on screen, sadly, because it doesn't seem to exist, but I have a very similar mundane watch that I wear. It was a present from my wonderful, beautiful and lovely wife. Episode 124. So literally the next episode, we had Dominic Hind on talking about railways and modernity in Scandinavia, which was a bit of a retrospective historical look at some of the social context in there. Well worth going through. A lot of fun that episode. And then episode 125. So what was that? 123, 124, and 125 in succession of history episodes. We did a bunch of these all close together, didn't we? What if the Intercity 125 had never existed? An alternate history. Very interesting. We thought about Intercity Electric. We thought about what the Class 89 might have looked like if it had been the be all and end all kind of electric locomotive running around the network. People are going wild in the chat. What's going on? Katie and Adam, tell me what's happening here. We did learn that there is a lot of HST Intercity 125 stands on Twitter. I'm a big fan of the 125, but as a historical vehicle. Anyway, episode 130 kind of. So what was that? That was 125. Only 5 episodes later, we were kind of sticking with a similar theme, really, which is looking at how engineers made the Great Western and Britain's first 125-mile-an-hour railway. Very. It's fun to dip through this, a bit of history, but engineering, some nice detailed engineering here as well. If you like the detailed, fiddly engineering, good stuff, dive into that. That's a fun episode. And also a thing that I quite, if I X2, people getting excited about X2 trains. Yes, that's right. It's a very fetching Swedish train. A sub-series that I would like to do at some point in the future, certainly plans to do it as part of some of my out and about adventures over the next 100 episodes, the next 100 up to 300, we'll be talking about ways that BR was the most peaked in terms of innovation, that most of the substantial number of world leading innovations came out of BR. And here's an example of one which we talked about in that episode, which is a kind of a track monitoring device that was about the size of a shoebox or maybe slightly larger, and you just placed it under a chair and sat it on the carpet, and it did its job very neatly. So really nice innovation, and we talked a bit about that in the episode. Episode 136. This was a good fun episode. We looked at probably, and as we found out later, not actually all of Britain's movable railway bridges. Finding all of these was, as any asset information is, it's usefully representative of how hard it is to find anything about. There is no centralised database of anything on Britain's railways. It's certainly not a complete one of anything, although there are people in the chat attempting to fix this. But we were looking at all of Britain's movable railway bridges, or trying to, and we did a reasonable job. I think we found 19. Unfortunately, afterwards, at least 4 other ones that we hadn't looked at were told to us, and I haven't gone into detail to check whether these met our criteria, but the 4 that I think probably do: Carmarthen Bascule Bridge, Compass Road Swing Bridge in Cardiff, I think that is, Hull King George Docks Swing Bridge, and Preston Docks Swing Bridge. I think all 4 of these meet the criteria that we set ourselves for movable railway bridges, which was still extant, still movable, and still with rail on them. I think that was still in situ. I think that those were the rules. I can't exactly remember. In that episode, a fun episode anyway. Go back and watch that. We did a good detailed P-Way episode 145. This is a bit of a half engineering, half history episode, which is a mostly British history of concrete sleepers. What was fun about this episode is that we had discovered some types of guy. In this case, Thaddeus Hyatt is a type of guy. Go back to the episode and discover a number of different types of guy who had stuff to do with inventing concrete. It was a fun episode. I enjoyed that. In fact, we looked at the invention of reinforced concrete in the episode, so that very much a concrete episode. And then, more depressingly, we looked at the Railways Act 1993 in detail, and we looked at the consequences of that act in detail. We looked at the way it impacted on the railways in Britain, and basically caused more than their fair share of, if not all of, the problems we have today on the railways. We saw the conversion of British Rail into a wholly atomised mess as a result of that act, and we looked at why that was a bad idea and some of the consequences of it. Episode 160. So it's kind of jumping forwards. We looked at beaching, reshaping, the reshaping plan. It is behind me. It's up behind me. Reshaping at 60 and the real legacy. And we looked at a few things. One of the things we looked at was, before we looked at those numbers, one of the things we looked at was the fact that closing rural railways was not the worst thing that happened out of this. In fact, it was really not that much of an issue. Okay, the subsequently mismanaged with losing the routes, the paths, the corridors, but the rights of way. But the worst thing Beeching did was basically creating a railway system that overlaid suburban, intra-urban and inter-urban services onto the same, often two-track routes. That was the worst thing that Beeching did, not foreseeing the need for massive additional suburban capacity outside of London. So one of the other things within that was the numbers. We were this very interesting comparison of 1961 to 2021 numbers in terms of income, which back in 1961 was 11 billion and today is 4 billion. Or in 2021 was 4 billion. Expenses, which were in 1961 13 billion and in 2021 22 billion, resulting in the deficit, or rather the grant from government in 1961. By the way, this is corrected to 2022 prices. In 1961 was 2 billion, and in 2021 was 18 billion. So interesting that there are other reasons why that's changed so much. It's not just because of all the closures that's altered, but it's interesting just comparing those numbers and seeing like the fuss that was made in 1961 about a £2 billion deficit compared to the, well, okay, now a reasonable fuss again being made in 2021. This is relevant to some of the discussions we're seeing. But hopefully that was a particularly interesting one. The chat has died, so I'm going to just very quickly check. People, say a thing so I can check that you're all still there. Good. No one said anything since Graham saying IKB, so just check that you're all alive and well in the chat. We're not far off the end here. So that was episode. Zach joined us very recently to talk about Jersey's tramways and railways. It was a fun episode. It was an illustrated history. I enjoyed that very much. Again, we had some good types of guy in there, which I enjoyed a lot. And then most recently, episode 197, we had what I enjoyed. I very much enjoyed pulling this episode together, and hopefully it was a fun one. We covered, good grief, all sorts. The tubular tale of Torksey Viaduct. Just a mission within there, but within that we covered things as wide as the Crimean War and a bridge collapsing on a village in Wales. So it's just a good range of historic stuff going on that we kind of entered there. There's some good engineering, as ever. It's not, these episodes have categorized a bit, but actually there's some detailed fiddly engineering going on in these episodes as well as there certainly was in this one. So that was history, but to talk about railway history, you have to go to the National Railway Museum, and it happens to be that I'm in the city where that is. So we dropped in on the National Railway Museum more than once. We had episode 154. We had what I hope will not be the last of a fantastic chat with Bob Gwynn. Bob Gwynn, who is now retired, I believe, from the National Railway Museum as one of their lead curators. Bob, we had a great chat, and I look forward to having another chat with Bob, possibly somewhere similar in the museum, if they'll let him in, if they haven't put a restraining tag on him because he might come in and try and theft things like that. Tim Dunn does as well. Talking of which, check out an episode in a minute. So that was Bob. We had a great chat. We talked about all sorts of history. I enjoyed that one very much. Episode 156, we chatted to the brilliant Charlotte Kingston to talk about what the hell is happening at the National Museum, because lots of stuff is happening. The museum is, well, they've opened a new gallery, which is good, but there's lots of other stuff that's a bit rubbish at the museum because half of it's closed. But there's a reason for that. It's because they're doing lots of really good stuff, and I'm looking forward to it coming to a conclusion in the not too distant future. Episode 171, we dithered about in the museum to talk about the fact it was the 120th birthday of the windscreen wiper. I remember very early on in my RailNatter organising spreadsheet that if you're a Patreon subscriber, by the way, you can go into. There is a link for you to go into and view that to sort of see what upcoming future episodes there are. You can get involved in that. I remember very early on scrolling forwards to episode 171 and writing windscreen wipers on that episode, and we got to it, and I did it. We had a nice chat about windscreen wipers. I off the top of my dome had to come up with remember all the history of that, and then I retrofitted a lot of post-recorded. So that was a fun episode anyway. Go back to that one. And then possibly one of the most fun episodes of the whole of this century, this second century of episodes, was episode 184, where Tim and I created some reasonably severe chaos running around inside the new Wonderlab gallery. we caused quite a bit of chaos, in fact, and I did a lot of laughing. I did a lot of laughing in the edit as well. This is a fun episode. In fact, it was hopefully a fun episode to watch, because there were a lot of edits. This was a very heavily edited episode to make sure that it achieved maximum entertainment value for the fun that we'd been creating and causing. By the way, if Tim is here, by the way, Tim did say he'd drop in. Hello, Tim, if you're here. Lots of love. And we stayed in the museum, or rather we returned to the museum. I didn't stay in the museum, that would have been a bit creepy. We returned to the museum. Chris invited us back to look through some wonderful documents, not just the Selby diversions, some of its original tender designs, but some of the original design kind of drawings of the Great Central Main Line, the London extension of the what was it, Sheffield, Manchester, Lincolnshire, you know the one I mean, before it was called the GCR. 40 years since the UK built its first high-speed line, of course, the Selby diversion. It was a good episode, 191. So then we history, museum, everything we learned, we put into, and hence why I'm wearing this hoodie, we put that into practice to develop one of the great tools of Rail Natter legend, where we learned how to categorise urban transport systems properly. We learned how to do it properly by... well, first of all, we had kind of, leading up to this, we had a bit of a discussion about the fact that Crossrail isn't a tube line. We had a discussion about the fact that Tube Map is retiring. We had a discussion about the fact that Crossrail should be called Thameslink 2. We discussed other London woes. And kind of off the back of that, also, we discovered that Rylan, who's now done television and podcasts about this, but at the time, somewhat closeted. Obviously, the biggest thing Rylan was closeted about. Actually, I don't know if Rylan is ever closeted. I hope not. Just loads of love to Rylan, by the way, because he's a massive train geek and now self-confessed. Beautiful thing. It reminds me of the piece Tim wrote in Attitude magazine when Tim was like he used to hide his railway magazines inside Attitude magazine in terms of the things that he was less willing to share with society. Was a beautiful thing, and indeed Rylan is a beautiful thing for being a self-confessed train geek. So lots of love to Rylan. Episode 117, this is where it happened, everyone. We introduced it. It's the Rail Natter, not a metro sorter. We did it. And we used the damn thing quite regularly. And indeed we did in episode 149, where we point out the light rail simply does not exist. Incidentally, in this episode, something quite important came in. I pulled in some sort of related to this was how you come up with what a good transport system should look like. And number one, is particularly urban transport system. Number one is you determine the outcomes. What do you want to achieve? Number two is you map the receptors. Number three, you establish the corridors. Number four, you calculate the capacity. Number five, you then, last of all, appraise the technologies. And this is kind of what the Not a Metro Sorter is about. It's a bit of fun to point out that we don't that you should be applying the technology once you've developed the need and understood the need. Yes, this was only this century that we come up with Not a Metro Sorter, I know. And then we kept at it. Episode 162, we were using weird transport system to attempt to break it, and we did not break it. It survived. I do genuinely believe that it survived. What else? There's some other engineering topics we kind of chewed through as well. There's some other things that we wanted to kind of understand, learn, play with. I'm just going to do a quick shout out to someone on here. Just check a few things. Right, lovely. Yeah, so engineering topics. We've already covered a lot of detailed engineering topics, often through history or others, but there are a few pretty detailed, fiddly engineering topics we went through. One of them, of course, was episode 135, looking at what happened when cracks grounded the Hitachi UK train fleet, particularly its intercity fleet. It's hello Gareth. Gareth has joined us. Hello. Anyway, many Gareths in the chat. Love to see you all. So that was episode 135. 164 was good fun. Should you go fast or slow over a collapsed railway bridge? The big questions. I had a lot of fun. Oh, by the way, no one has created a BeamNG test. I want to see what happens when you go fast or slow over a collapsed railway bridge. Come on, get the BeamNG model running. Let's cause some chaos. Talking of chaos, a fun but also serious episode 165. What really happened when the Tesco tunnel collapsed? Good episode, that one. We discovered that the HSE is a problem. It is a problem. I'm not saying that we have to get rid of it, but we have to talk about the fact that it is a problem. And that episode, I think, really showed why it's a problem. And I fear that when we start looking at Ladbroke Grove and other episodes that look at how the HSE fitted into the early privatised railway. We'll discover how much of a problem the HSE was. We looked at how, why crossing noses crack. Also, what is one of those in episode 167? We had a load of pictures of failed filleted cast crossings, and well worth going to the most recent Well, There's Your Problem podcast to understand some of why those, understand what a stress concentration is in that episode. Fun crossover, pun entirely intended. We also had some other fun, because we have to scatter in some general fun. We talk about, well, there's your problem, but of course we had Justin on to talk about the ways that the US railroads can be bad, as a bit of a response to his previous episode saying they were good. Well, Justin joined us to talk about precision scheduled railroading and other things that they're actually bad about US railroads. Good episode. I mean, obviously it's a fantastic episode. Roz is friend of the show, friend, and kind of podcasting legend. We had a YRP episode. We had our skills gap episode. What skills gap? We will continue to have these. The next one might be a live show, folks. Ooh. Episode 146. Emily joined. Of course, Emily joined us, and we didn't have one of these this year, even though I hoped to. And that was because I'm disorganized, not because not for lack of Emily's trying. Emily desperately prompting, going, "Do you want to do this? Because if you are, you should kind of organize it." And me going, "I'm so tired. I've been bouncing a baby for 3 hours solid." That was episode 146. It's a nice, festive, fun episode. Although more guest oddities required for the next one, I believe. So. Oh, Luke Agbyman, he joined us. I love these episodes. It was the second of our episodes with Luke. It was Perfection and Imperfection on the Underground, episode 155. Luke's book is still behind me. There it is. Joyous. In fact, I can do. Wait a minute. Watch this. Let's go for. Let's go for desk cam. There's desk cam. There it is. There it is. There's Luke's book. What else is down here? There's some other books down here. And there's Miles. Hey, Miles. How you doing? Nice to see Miles getting on in life, having fun. Anyway, right. There's a little view of Miles while I press small face again. So actually, I need to just that's fine. So episode 155. Episode 174. Emily joined us for the episode that Emily and I were going to do as the first episode between Emily and I. This episode was wonderful. There's a hopeful but cautionary tale, I believe. How to make railway fandom a bit more inclusive. Wonderful episode. Emily is just a delight. Strongly recommend it. Everyone goes and subscribes to everything Emily is involved with immediately, if you don't already. Soon after that, a few episodes after that, we had How Do You Build a Modern Train Simulator Game with Matt Pedleston and Joseph Rogers. A really interesting episode for those of you who are interested about how you build train sims. Well, this episode tells you. Very good fun. Episode 186, Leo Scott Smith joined us, the boss of and entrepreneur creator of a tech company, which you might think is a thing to be wary of, but actually this is an example of a piece of very useful tech to my mind, something that actually is improving and can improve and should improve safety. It's being rolled out. Putting geofencing to good use to improve track safety. It's an interesting episode. We talked about geofencing as a useful technology, and Leo introduces the tech and what the plans were for its continued rollout. Michael C is asking if I've seen Eleanor, LNER's new mascot. It's going to be in the next episode, I think. We'll talk about Eleanor. I have seen Eleanor. I'll save my thoughts. And then more recently, episode 195, we had fun talking about drawing transit maps. And by the way, for this episode where we drew transit maps in PowerPoint, you don't have to draw them to look exactly like the ones I did in PowerPoint. I just drew them kind of like that as an example. But there are all sorts of different ways you can draw them. I was just kind of showing you some of those tools. But we can definitely do another one of those. If people are keen, happy to do a version 2 of this. People chuck your suggestions for can you draw a map of this, and I'll find ones that you can fit within an hour. That was episode 195, very recent. Of course, there are other things we did, like going on adventures. What adventures have we been on? Before we answer that question, Daniel Smith, has Gary Keener been a guest on the show yet? Gary Keener was a guest at least twice in the first century and hasn't joined us in this century. Not for any particular reasons, just I think Gary's been busy and Oli is a depressing nightmare of a political landscape at the moment. Yeah, we went on adventures. In episode 120, we went to Rail Live. I missed 2023, the first Rail Live I've missed. I hopefully won't miss this year's, although I don't know if I'll actually do an episode from this year's show, but if I do, I'll do it just interviews. I'll just find a couple of people and do a long, deep dive chat with people. That's Rail Live 2022, if Bauer will have me. Episode 121, off the back of that, the episode afterwards, we talked about VLR. What is it? Is it any good? We visited the kind of the test track and spoke about both systems. Episode 128, Simon took us on a merry tour of Anglia. To answer the question, have Stadler really built Britain's best train fleet? The answer being, yeah, they have. It's brilliant. All long distance trains should have this to beat, let's put it that way. Episode 128, that was a fun episode. With, again, these adventure episodes are fun because I have to edit them, and therefore there are lots of edit gags, which I do admittedly enjoy doing. Episode 137, taking the train from York to Mansfield. This is a random episode. I took the train from York to Mansfield and then drove back because I was picking up the Panda from a car dealership in Mansfield, and Mansfield's pretty difficult to get to, so it was like, how do I get the train there reasonably quickly? It gave us some things to talk about, and an episode to put together, and some fun little gags, I hope. Anyway, I enjoyed a little adventure, and I intend to do more of these, hopefully some more collaborations with some of our other content creators out there. I'd love to do some day trips with some creators out there, take a train journey with some of the railway folk out there. That should be fun. The Paul Whitehouses, the G Loves Trains, get me and Jeff on a train. Some of the who else can we get out on trains? Someone mentioned one of the Map Men earlier. Let's do some of that stuff. Let's pester them, and we'll chat. Talking of collaborations, Jeff was definitely in this one. Episode 153 was a High Speed 2 visit episode, of which I intend to do more. Look at me with a beard. That was a while ago. Taking a look inside a tunnel boring machine. This was seriously epic. Oh, it's very, very cool. I had a lot of fun on this one, and I'd highly recommend you going back and relive it if you didn't watch it, or if it's been a while since you watched it. And then the epic journey, the last epic journey, which I hope you enjoyed, and it was a nice reminisce putting it together, let's put it that way. Episode 179, the Belgrade Bar Railway, parts 1, 2 and 3, Belgrade to Užice, Užice to Kolyšin, and Kolyšin to Bar. I had a tremendous time putting these together. Sadly, the last episode, YouTube just chewed it up, and I uploaded it twice afterwards as a private video to see if it improved the quality to fix the issues, and it did not. I don't know why the video, it's not rendered in any way different to any other video, but just didn't like it. I don't know why, YouTube. So it's a bit jittery. The sound is fine, but the video is a bit jittery, which is really sad because it ruins some of my edit gags. Anyway, screw you, YouTube. I'm still proud of it. Episode 183, Belgrade Bar Railway, Kolyšin to Bar. Yeah, 3-parter. Good adventure, that one. I certainly enjoyed it. It was nice reminiscing. Definitely want to do a collab with Jen on the Move. Very much friend of the show. Through all this stuff, we had to trawl through the usual tech nonsense, which generally just provided us entertainment, to be honest. The classic, which is why driverless tube trains will never work. That was episode 104. And what was interesting in this one is that it gave me an excuse to just go to hell with hidden information and just go through the network business case from August 2020, where TfL looked at what driverless trains would achieve and the fact that it would not bring any value for money. So if you were going to do it, you'd have to do it because there was ideological reason, not because it was going to be a cost-saving measure, despite the fact that it was being claimed as a cost-saving measure by the then Secretary of State for Transport, Grant Shapps. Remember him? Alexandra joined us for episode 118, and we looked at goofy American gadget bands from the 1970s, and what a delight it was, because some of them were stupid. In fact, all of them were stupid, but some of them were gorgeous. And the ones in this picture are particularly nice looking, even though if they are, let's just say retro looking and visually appealing, even if they were complete gibbering nonsense. Great fun episode that, and Alexandra's a well-informed delight to have on the show. And episode 122, talking about Grant Shapps, our very special, dear special boy. We talked about episode 122. We talked about his terrible signalling tweet. It's a fairly news heavy episode, but we did. It was a focused episode, not a news episode. We talked about his terrible signalling tweet. We also did the VLR Q&A, but it gives us a chance to look at some of the history, in fact, of signalling. It kind of busted that myth, that annoying myth that I hear a lot. That I have to say bothers me a bit, which is, the Victorian railway. We have Victorian this, Victorian that, Victorian signalling. It's like, particularly in terms of signalling, it's gibberish. We have some of the world's most impressive, and indeed we had, and in some cases still marginally have world-beating signalling systems on our railway, and that history was particularly interesting to kind of pick through briefly in undermining Shaps's gibbering nonsense. And then, of course, most recently, the last episode of all in our century, episode 199, Hyperloop 1 is gone, but when will this nonsense die? And I'm not going to go through that because that was last week, so you should all remember it. And if you don't, go back and watch it, because we talked about every single company and why it's lying to us, and what they've built and how much money they've grifted out of otherwise sensible, rational actors. So there we go. All the episodes there. And look, my face is in the way of them, so I'm just going to go no Facebook. Look at all these 100 episodes. With a bar of slightly different branding episodes at the bottom there for fun. A couple that we've got a red episode, a white episode, a purple episode. No green episodes. We haven't done a green episode. We need to do another green episode where we go an hour in length rail journey. We need to do more of those. But being a dad means I have to be at home more. Hence, more docile episodes. I need to get more guests booked in. We've had a lack of guests of late, and I do apologise for that. A decent number of guests, though, I think, overall. So. Things to say. Firstly, competition time. I said there'd be some fun. Competition time, kind of off the back of that, but it's widened out, not just the last 100 episodes, but actually all of the episodes. There is a competition. Will I do an episode on 250? Yeah, I think I probably will for the 250th episode, and I probably will do one on the 225 sets on episode 225. Competition time. Because for a chance to win one of 10 random railway items from the big sack under my desk, and this is where desk cam is going to come in. So here's desk. It's me. It's desk cam guy. Hello everyone. Hi. It's me, your host. There's the slider. You, and you too. I don't know who I'm swearing at, but I'm swearing at someone. There's the screens. There's you lot. You're all there. There's OBS, and there's the screen that tells me everything that's going on, and a load of rubbish behind. We're going to go down here, because under this desk is some wires and some wires. But this thing, what's this thing with the hole in it that's so stuff's leaking out of it? Well, what is in there? What is it? Ooh. In there is, literally strangling myself with my own. You're seeing at my nostrils. Let's go back to normal big face. There we go. That's better. So. In that sack is from a while back. I did a sort through of a load of stuff, because in this sack is all sorts of bits and pieces, including a Vienna advent calendar. I'm afraid all the chocolates have been eaten. Hello, I'm going to move the mic over here so you can hear me better. We have a ticket to the railway ball. There's all sorts of random stuff in here. We have oh yeah, very nice. We have a 2022 and 2023 campaign for Borders Rail calendar. Yeah, these things. I don't know. I'm not showing you them. There's so much more in here. Oh yes, these. I think this one's new and unused. We have a Derby remodeling water bottle here. It's just a box. It's a bag of treats, and in this bag of treats, the bag just burst worse. Let's not worry about that. I've just ordered a Hessian sack to bring you back here. I've just ordered a Hessian sack so that I can put them into a humorous sack for when I extract them at random, because there are multiple strange gifts in there. Some of them, there's some valuable ones in there as well. I know some of those were a bit rubbish. But in fact, shall I dig my hand in once more? Let me dig my hand in once more. Oh. So here we go. Right, what's in here then? There's firstly tote bag from Bentley. Thanks, Bentley. Strange. We have a Dura Composites plastic cup. We have what is this? An Azuma VIP launch ticket there. These are the sorts of things that some of you might be very interested in having. We have a Schweehag hat from Rail Live there. So you might think this is just junk and crap, but some of you might think it's brilliant. Some of it's quite historic. Some of it's quite naff, like this Aquarius water bottle from the late 1980s. It's not actually from the late 1980s, but the bottle is. There's some interesting. There's a few of these. Rail Future. These ones are always interesting. Derby re-signalling ticket holder, and an old National Rail one. So there's this crap that's in here. Oh, some more interesting things here are the guest lists to some previous National Rail Awards. So I will dig into these. Oh, and also, what else is here? There's a TSSA diary. That's not hugely exciting, but we also have what's this? An X-Rail book. It's very nice. There's some nice stuff in here. There's an LNER branded and a Bentley branded a book. There's some books. There's some valuable and interesting stuff in here. And what? Oh, also look at this. There's a leather LNER ticket holder. That's quite nice, isn't it? All this stuff. I'm not going to give it all away at once, but I will pile in there. I'll pick out a general pile of good things. We'll wrestle around in here. Oh god, it's falling so badly. Oh dear. Anyway, that pile down there that we're going to... I forgot my Jura Composites mug. If you want me to sign it when I send it to you, that's a thing we can discuss. But in order to win this, you must... for a chance to win one of the 10 random railway items from the big sack under my desk, you must... Very simple. Send me your favourite moment from the last 200 episodes. That's it. Just send me your favourite moment from the last 200 episodes. Send it to railnatter@garethdennis.co.uk. It's as simple as that. I will print off on a sheet of paper and cut up the suggestions. I'll put them in a little sack. Your name will be on those suggestions. I will reach in and pull at random 10 of those suggestions, and then I will pull at random some gifts out of... Well, in fact, no, I'll not pull the gifts out at random. I'll list the gifts in order. So there'll be 10 things in order, increasing order of perceived value and interest. I will then pull those your favourite moments out of said Hessian sack, and you will get the thing. And then I will email you saying, you've won the thing. Would you like me to sign it? Would you like me to write a message on it? Or do you want it to be immaculate and clean so that you can add it to a collection or do something strange with it? Whatever nefarious purposes you might have, whether you want to break into a secure site pretending you're someone else, all those sorts of good things in Minecraft, of course. Those sorts of fun things you can do, and that's a competition, so get involved. Oh, that should be fun, a bit of fun. There's some general other chat in here, which is Katie asking if there'll be another live meet, important parental responsibilities notwithstanding. Absolutely, this year I would very much like there to be a live meet, and it might be the YRP episode, but certainly another episode. I'd like there to be a live episode because I had such fun on the first one, and I reckon with the numbers, how quickly the numbers filled up last time, I reckon we can fill a decent venue, to be honest. So I reckon it'll happen. Anyway, also... look out for a chance to vote in the Rail Natter Awards, because in however many episodes, I think it's episode 220 something, there'll be the Rail Natter Awards where you will be able to win. Well, not you, but episodes and therefore guests will be able to win the coveted golden Pandrel clip. There it is. Guests will be able to win the coveted golden Pandrel clip. For guest episodes, for this, for that. Oh, good point. Someone's asked about the closing date for the competition. Closing date for the competition. I knew there was something I needed to say. Small face. Closing date for the competition. 2 weeks. So not next week's episode. The week after's episode will be when I do the prize draw. So you got 2 weeks. So get your favorite moments in, and they will be put in a sack. Email me them. So email me them and just put the subject. The subject should be. I don't care. I'll just go through it. I presume I won't get more than 100 entries, so I'm sure I'll be able to just work out what your email is. But just email me, railnatter@garethdennis.co.uk, to send me your favourite moment, and do that by the end of the day before or sort of by the end of the day before the next episode, which is, the date will be by the end of the 23rd. So by midnight on the 23rd of January 2024, you need to have sent me your favourite moment. You can only send one favourite moment. Don't send multiple emails thinking you'll end up with multiple slips in the bag. Don't pretend to be multiple people, all that good stuff. Be nice, play nice. But I will post you a thing. I will wrap a thing. I will post you a thing, and it will be. It should be good fun. Yeah, the email on screen. Yes, not Discord. No, don't do it Discord, because I'll lose it. Email it, because then I have them all in one place. railnatter@garethdennis.co.uk. So I'm going to put the golden Pandora clip behind me, where it should be. Arranged appropriately, hopefully not banging enough that I wake my darling wee one up. Let me press this button and continue. So look out for that chance to vote in the Rail Natter Awards coming up. Also, I'm expecting ideal UK high-speed map is the Rail Natter equivalent of WTYP's episode on Chernobyl. Well, indeed. We have to. It's episode 200. It's episode 200. Hooray! 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 All it remains is for us to do a little bit of celebration. Let's wait a minute. Let's place this here. In fact, because, no, you know what? Let's press this button. We're going to desk cam again, because I have here. Actually, let's get this thing down here. Let's do this. We have got a plate. We have got a bag of cakes. Indeed, Lancashire. I live in York, but we've got some Lancashire Eccles cakes, because you have to have cake to celebrate events like this. So there's an Eccles cake. There's a candle. Let's celebrate the true way we can, which is by having a cake with a candle in it. That's how you celebrate. That's how you celebrate big events, isn't it? There we go. Nearly set fire to the table. Nice bit of candle. There we are. All it remains to be is there we are. Look at this. Happy birthday. Happy 200 anniversary, Rail Natter. This is a cake for all of you. I'm so pleased. 200 episodes. Isn't that remarkable? Hooray! Yeah, I'd have had some music now, but I forgot to put that in the episode because I have so little. It's been a busy week. I've been checking documents for TRU, and I'm very tired. I was checking until 2 a.m. the last 2 nights because poor little one has also been very sick. Right, here we are. Happy 200, everyone, and this goes to all of you as well. Thanks so much for watching, for listening, for being a guest, however you've been involved. I love you all. There we go. There's some smoke setting off the fire alarm and causing the whole episode to collapse in on itself. Oh my goodness me. Oh dear. As ever, to you listening, in podcast land, drop your reviews, drop your little Spotify comments. There's been some nice little Spotify Q&A answers that people have sent back, which is very nice. Thanks for you. You've sent some lovely. I'll tweet them out because they're really nice. But thanks to everyone listening. I don't know how this worked in audio only format. I don't know how well you could hear the striking of a Bryant May. Bryant and May, sorry. I don't know what the matches are. It's not the brand that I normally go for anyway, but the ones, the extra long matches. I digress. What am I waffling on about? Oh, yeah. The usual plugs. Patreon.com/GarethDennis. Just shout out to all the Patreon people. Your names come up in the credits, and I update it as frequently as I can if I'm not being rushed to pull an episode together. But shout out to all of you. You're all wonderful. The support you give allows this to happen. I just could quite put simply, I could not justify the time that I put into Rail Natter without you. It just wouldn't happen. I have a 9-to-5 job and a family. I make that sound as if I look after Dina as well. No, Dina has a full-time job also. We both have a full-time job, but these days both full-time job earners have to work like that to sustain a family because Britain expensive, etc. So the Patreon people, you allow this to happen, and I love you all very much, and I will do my best to share more fun nonsense with you as going forwards, and I there will be additional competition availability. Not that competition that I've just shared is for everyone, but there will be a separate competition for the Patreon people. So watch this space. PayPal.me/Gareth, thanks for loose change and abuse. I don't use that often, but people who send me stuff that way, thank you very much indeed. It's lovely of you. GarethDennis.co.uk/merch for the merch. Still first edition merch. I need to go back and update it, but it requires me to have a few hours to sit on a computer and do that, which I don't have at the moment. I will update it, but it still says the right word on it, so that's fine. GarethDennis.co.uk/Discord for the Discord server to continue the chat on and on and on. Marvelous as it is, there's so much that goes on in that server. I drop in every now and then. Always feel free to at me. I may miss your message if the messages are flying so quickly that I go in and Discord has lost the message for me. I may lose it, but just at me again. It's fun. Next week is episode 201. 201 kilometres an hour. Getting ready for the All Ireland Rail Review. So the full All Ireland Rail Review has not been published yet, but the consultation document was, and we're going to look through that, and we might use a bit of the Rail Natter patented methodology to have a look at what the rail network ought to look like, certainly at a kind of major town connectivity level, what that rail network might look like, and kind of look at some of the data in the consultation report. That should be a fun episode next week. I'm looking forward to it. All Ireland Rail Review. 2024 is the year of all of Ireland, as you all know. And that should be some good fun for us to look into. I'm looking very much forward to it. The room now smells of match smoke, which is quite pleasant, actually. Oh, I realised that was a fairly low-key event, and it's only just me in a room talking to 100 people, sharing this experience with. But honestly, it's been lovely to have you along. I've had such fun. Hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully that was useful. I don't want to just go through each episode pointlessly. Hopefully that actually had some functionality of signposting different episodes for different themes. I hope that actually was a useful episode, even though it's now an hour and a half long. Right, time to wrap up, everyone, isn't it? Keep nattering. I'll see you next week. Cheerio! Cheerio!
Tick tock, tick tock. It's 7 o'clock. That must mean it's time for. You hopping out the thing. It's time for Rail Natter special edition. Ooh. So you driving the train as well? Rail Natter special edition. Because it's me, Gareth Dennis. To my show. Rail Natter, log on. Rail Natter. It matters. It's about trains. Log on. And what fresh hell have we got this week?